Alright, YouTube, those of you who are familiar with this channel for political reasons are probably familiar with Scott Adams, the creator of Dilbert. I'll say Dilbert's one of the top three for me as far as cartoons go. I've always been partial to Garfield. It's sort of fallen away from the making lasagna jokes era of Garfield that was funnier. And Garfield minus Garfield, by the way, is funnier than actual Garfield. Which is even funnier. It essentially devolves into John talking to himself and being hopeless. But Dilbert's really a funny cartoon, but Scott Adams has made a new name for himself actually now by labeling himself the master of persuasion and speaking about politics and society as opposed to just his cartoon work. I happen to have come at various times to the same conclusion he has through different means. He uses literally his knowledge of persuading people, hypnotism, and things, psychology, things of that nature. I use my knowledge of history, my knowledge of political discourse, and as well my general awareness of the paradigm shift that we're undergoing towards social media away from the legacy media. Same conclusion, different manner of achieving it. However, Scott Adams has changed his endorsement back to Trump. Now, he went from endorsing nobody to kind of endorsing Trump. Then he said he endorsed Hillary, then Gary Johnson, and now he's back to Trump again. I guess what pushed him over the edge is his final realization. I think he's more genuine this time. I think that he supported Trump all along. It was fairly obviously a joke when he talked about endorsing Hillary. As far as Johnson, I think he was sheltering from the fallout of his sex scandal there. I think that he's generally liked Trump more all along. I think he's genuine when he says that he doesn't believe in any of their policies, necessarily to any great degree, because he claims, well, I don't know how to solve Obamacare or whatever. I will say this, though, the tactic Scott Adams is using is more interesting than the tactics he identifies Trump is using. That is true. The tactic Scott Adams has used is by taking all sides of the reigning political debate he can't lose. Because if, for instance, if Trump does win in a landslide, as he now, again, is predicting, well, he comes off smelling like a rose. Trump wins in a landslide. If Clinton ends up winning, it doesn't really matter to him because he's already at one time endorsed Hillary Clinton. He also endorsed Johnson. By taking multiple sides on different issues, you can stymie any critics because you no longer seem to have any significant personal bias in the race. Interesting tactic. Of course, I was a Johnson supporter for most of the campaign, throughout the primaries into the early part of the general, until it became clear he was faltering. He was no longer a libertarian. I take up a more political hard line. I am a libertarian, and yet I'm going to be voting for Trump over the libertarian candidate because I identify that Johnson is not a libertarian. That is, he in no way does he even resemble the core platform that the party is supposed to have, or that the ideology, rather, is supposed to have. We have to differentiate ideology and party. Scott Adams is now predicting with 98% certainty a Trump landslide. I think it's possible that there's something going on behind the scenes whereby Scott Adams is acutely aware, somehow, of Trump's own acute awareness that there's a scandal incoming that's going to destroy Hillary Clinton. That would be my best guess of why the sudden change of heart, based upon something that he would have observed. He's an intelligent and rational individual. He would have observed all along that Hillary Clinton's fans were bullies. And that's what he's saying. He's saying, well, they harass people, they bully people, they call a large proportion of the population deplorable or irredeemable, so, I have to endorse the person running against them. And this is just after, by the way, he makes a post involving taking up arms against Trump if he wins and becomes like Hitler, which I think most reasonable people would do. If Trump did win and declared himself dictator, became like a fascist, yeah, most of the population, including most Republicans, would rise up against him. Unless he had a damn good policy proposal, in which case it might even the odds a little bit. However, I will say this. The fact that the media broke not long ago the fact that Trump had funded Veritas, which is true, leads me to believe that he's probably already seen O'Keefe's big nuclear video, which supposedly is Hillary Clinton ranting in a racist manner. If Trump is aware of the depth of the incoming scandal, he would claim that he's winning. He would talk about rigged polls. He would do whatever the hell he wants, hold his rallies, and essentially ignore his opponent because he would know that he's going to win the election. I ask myself this. This is my line of reasoning. Does a person who is delusional and out of touch with reality typically do well in a business scenario? The answer is no, because if you don't have a good reading of reality, you're going to invest in the wrong things and probably go broke. You're probably not going to succeed in any form of business, let alone real estate development, if you're out of touch with reality. So unless Trump has magically become a lunatic in the span of less than a year, and I don't think that that's particularly likely, I have to say he has a good grasp on reality. Clearly, if he's looking at the same polls that everyone else is, looking at the public dialogue the same as everyone else, he knows something that the lay people don't. That's my estimation of the situation. I think he's aware of what's incoming, and he's convinced, whether he's right or wrong matters very little. I think he's convinced that he will be winning by the time of the election, which just gives me more fortitude in believing that he will win, because he's not out of touch with reality. Most of what Trump has said during this campaign, I'll tell you this, whether he wins or loses makes no difference. Most of what Trump has said has been hyperbole and posturing specifically designed in order to garner more and more support, specifically a hardened core of support that wouldn't abandon him no matter what. He then simply needs to denigrate Hillary Clinton, who doesn't have a hardened core of support of any great size, to the point which the soft support either doesn't vote, votes third party, or maybe votes for Trump, or votes for Clinton at very low levels, and she loses the election. I think that's been his strategy for some time, and I think that it potentially could work. When people are talking about the polls being rigged and oversampled and so forth, okay, let me concede and grant you the fact that that's a possibility. Maybe the LA Times really is the most accurate polling firm. It might ultimately not even matter. Over the next 2 weeks, we may see an atomic bomb dropped on the race that completely dissolves Hillary Clinton's support. There's the possibility that her now absence from the general campaign trail in favor of stumping around for down-ballot Democrats is a last-ditch move to try to buoy support of the party itself because she knows her own support will erode, in hopes of getting enough political favors and kickbacks during the next couple of weeks to make it through the next few decades. Essentially, right now, she's letting people get favors from her in turn, and she'll turn around later down the road and call them in as well, because she knows she's going to lose. That is a possibility. Scott Adams, as a person versed in persuasion and hypnotism, knows that if he takes all sides of an issue, he can't lose. He even speaks openly about this. When he speaks of Trump's persuasion tactics, some of the time he's projecting his own tactics. The fact that he labels himself a master of persuasion and Trump is the same thing means we would think there would be an echo between the strategies of the two of them. When you read his posts about Trump, insert the name Scott Adams, and at times you'll see that it syncs up with what Scott Adams himself has been doing just with his own blog. All of a sudden, a person who primarily is known as a cartoonist is being compared with people like Nate Silver and Larry Sabato and folks like that, to the point at which he's getting interviews, he's getting money for his time on air. He's selling probably 10 times more copies of his book than he ever sold before, maybe more than that, maybe 100 times as many. He's raking in the dough. He's getting all sorts of attention, and what people who have experienced any substantial audience for a number of years, I happen to have experienced this myself, negative attention is not a bad thing. Negative attention is an opportunity to polarize things and draw more positive attention. It's not a bad thing. In fact, you probably want to drive negative attention because it hardens your core audience. Why do you think I occasionally attack ideas or groups of people and then encourage people to think in the same manner? I'm not trying to manipulate people for money. I'm not trying to manipulate people for ill reasons like taking over the world. Honestly, I believe strongly in my own mentality, in my own view of the world, If it were within my will to do so, I would personally lead a libertarian movement and try to destroy the two-party system. I'm doing that for what I feel is a noble cause, because I see things are strangulated, overtaxed, we're in too many wars, and the two-party system is leading us towards nuclear annihilation. That's the reason I do so. I see Trump as a mild reformer, I always have. I've been open about the fact that I'm not a hardened Trump fan, but I will be voting for him. Barring some sort of miraculous intervention, I'll be voting for him in November. That being said, am I on board with most of his policies? Well, his policies have shifted so much they almost don't matter anymore. The same's true of Clinton. The fact that both of these people continually morph their policies at any given time shows us that it no longer matters to most of the electorate, because most of the electorate is planning to vote for one of these two individuals. It's all about attitude and sabotaging the other campaign. Scott Adams believes, and he's probably right here, that by very visibly endorsing Trump and calling Hillary's fans a bunch of bullies, he can at the very least denigrate the sort of shilling that CTR does, and he's probably right there. He's grown from a person who simply interjected early and often into the race to somebody who now has a considerable amount of oomph when he speaks. And that's true. Many other people are enjoying the same benefit. People who have interjected into this race and have anything intelligent to say have often seen their own support grow monumentally over the last few months especially. I've seen it too. I started out this year with, I think, under 20,000 people subscribed to this channel. Now it's over 50,000. There's a reason for that. People aren't getting it from the legacy media. The legacy media has to be drag kicking and screaming just to analyze anything newsworthy. Look at what BI posts on a daily basis. Is it about business? No. It's about politics, and it's almost all yellow journalism. Look at what CNN ruminates on. They would ignore an ongoing genocide of tens of millions to focus on a 10-year-old tape where somebody says the word pussy. I think it's fairly obvious what's going on. So yeah, Scott Adams has joined the fray once again. He pretended that he endorsed Hillary Clinton. He was fairly open about the reason why he did that in a half-joking manner. It was for his own safety. And I believe that. Some of what he says is posturing. Again, just like Trump, he's projecting onto Trump the fact that he does that. He does it too. But most people haven't read into it that far because most people aren't familiar with this kind of reasoning. Most people just take it at face value. They actually, in a literal sense, they get hypnotized by the words on his blog, and they don't even realize what's going on. Scott Adams is a master of persuasion. It works very, very well. Otherwise, he wouldn't be doing so well. He wouldn't have so much weight on what's currently happening. And also, I think non-medicated individuals at this point realize Hillary Clinton is losing steam. Even in the so-called rigged polls, she's down like 5 or 6 points in the rigged polls from that height of a 10 or 11 point lead. That's got to be kind of worrying. I think that the scandals, the smaller leaks, are beginning to have an impact. I just don't estimate that it's enough impact. I think you need a literal atomic bomb on the race, and I'm still expecting that it's likely that that will happen. That's why I've given him the advantage. And as I've said, in the interest of full disclosure, if that doesn't happen, these more moderate leaks will not take Clinton down. The election may or may not be rigged. Regardless, though, I would expect her to win under such circumstances. It's just that those circumstances, when things seem off, they're probably off for a reason. So when I see that Trump's funding Veritas a year ago and acting very, very smug about his chances, to the point at which the media is declaring him out of touch with reality, I say maybe he's preparing for one final real trolling of the legacy media because he knows something they don't know, and inside he's laughing and biting his tongue because he knows it's going to drop in the next week and a half or so, and they're not prepared for it because they've never considered it a possibility. I think that possibly is why Hillary Clinton has essentially suspended her presidential campaign as far as, hey, I want to be, you should vote for me. It may not be out of optimism. It may be out of pessimism. Because currently, looking at RCP with 2 weeks to go, no sane individual, if they're ahead by 4 or 5 points, regardless of whether the polls are rigged or not. You can say, of course, oh, she's actually behind, she knows it, and she's essentially conceding at this point. Okay, granted, I don't operate from that assumption. No sane individual would essentially stop campaigning for the presidency to focus on the down-ballot Democrats with 2 weeks to go in the race, and then have to make up lost ground if it shows significant movement in the polls in the last 2 weeks. No sane individual would do that. And so it makes me suspicious that she knows as well something that we don't know, and it's not happy for her. It's a possibility. May be totally wrong, may be reading totally too much into this, but I guess over the next week and a half or so, we shall see. That's about all. Peace out.